100. So you should draw it there. That means if we drew it correctly, it would be right here. So we need to cross on our supply line. There it is right there. That looks pretty good. Okay, so if you got the shift in the right spot, good job. That's what it's supposed to look like. Let's take a look at the next one here. We're here. Now what's increasing is a foreign investment of 100 billion. So I still need to go here. But in this case, what is moving is my supply line. So I need to make sure I get that one in the right spot. Oops, 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 oops. I can draw better than that. Probably right there is good. Should have been easier if I started the other direction, huh? Okay, so you should have had an increase in supply. So this first one, increase in supply. This one's an increase in demand. Okay, any questions on those so far? I think those should have been easy for us. I just wanted the correct shift, so I didn't really care. But if you gave me the correct numbers as well too, even better, you know exactly what you're doing at this point. Okay, number 4 here. Charging along. Let's see here. Go back. It says now they're going to change their demand. They're pessimistic and they're going to decrease demand by 100 at every billion. So they gave you the idea. So we just got to kind of go here. So this is 100 billion less right there. Over here, that's probably 100 billion less. Do I need a third point? Not really, but let's do it anyways. That's 100 billion less. And if I connected these dots, multiplier. So if this is 10%, the multiplier is 10. This one's 20%. That means the multiplier is 5. Multiplier is 10%. Then it's 10 again here. Here the multiplier is 50%. That means it's 2. And if the 45% is, or 25% is the reserve required, that means the money multiplier is 4. Okay, so now that we have that, we can calculate every problem quite simply. First one, if the Fed buys 10 billion, what happens to the supply of money? Buy big, so it increases. It increases by how much? 10 times 10 is 100 billion. Next one, the Fed sells, so that's going to decrease the supply of money. How much? 50 billion, because 5 times 10 is 50. Next one, assume that the reserve requirement, oh, we already got that, 10%, and the Fed buys, that's going to increase. 5 times 10 is 50. Okay, assume the reserve requirement is 50. I keep reading that. The Fed sells, so that's going to decrease 5 billion, and our multiplier is 2. That means my answer is 10 billion, and here the Fed sells 2 billion, which decreases it. 2 times 4 is 8. That's how we got those answers right there. Okay, next one. This one's a little more challenging here. We'll look at the shifter practice. If the Fed increases the reserve requirement, so that means that what they did is they take this one over here and they shifted it to the right. Okay. What happens? So the Fed increases the reserve requirement. Oh, sorry, I did this one backwards. I read this one wrong. Okay, let's do it right this time. So they increase the reserve requirements. They shift it this way, right? Supply of money decreases. Okay, supply of money will go down. What happens to interest rate? We can see interest rate goes up. Okay, next one. The Fed sells bonds. Sells bonds is going to be the same way. You're going to decrease the supply of money. That'll shift our supply to the left. So just like the first one, supply of money will go down. Interest rates go up. What happens to investments though? Because interest rates go up, investments go down. So next one, the Fed decreases the reserve requirements. Now they got more money, right? I can lend out even more money, so my supply of money will increase. What happens to interest rate? It goes down. Okay. If the Fed decreases the discount rate, what will happen to the supply of money? Decreases it again, supply will increase. Interest rates will go down. And if the Fed buys bonds, it's the same way. Supply will increase, interest rates go down, and investment will go up. Okay, so those are all our answers for that right there. Erase that because that's not one. What is the federal funds rate? I'm just going to keep it short here. Interest rate, the Fed charges banks. It's technically for overnight loans, but who cares? Just the interest rate the Fed charges banks. That'll cover it. Any questions on the first page here? It's mostly definitions, so that one shouldn't be too bad. Let's take a look at the second page then. Okay. Where's my pen? So we're going to draw. So let's get going here. This is NER. This is PL. I'm going to leave the bottom blank here, but you should know what each one represents. Maybe I'll put this one here as quantity of dollars, because I want to leave this open so I can write. And of course, you should know this one's GDP. So let's start at a base unit here. There's my DM. There's my SM. And over here, what are we in? A recession. So we're in a recession. And if this one's a recession, I think the bottom one should be inflation. And that was kind of crooked there. And of course, this will be just our starting point. Okay, so let's get cracking on this now. Okay, so if we have this situation right here, we want to increase our aggregate demand so it's at the long run. Everything that we've been doing this whole semester. How do we do that if we're the Fed? Okay, remember the Fed can't directly control the demand for money. It can just control the supply. But what I can do here is increase the supply. Why does that happen? So if we increase the supply of money, what that tends to do is that lowers interest rates. Interest rates go down. When interest rates go down, borrowing goes up. When borrowing goes up, that means you're spending more, so aggregate demand increases. And that's the whole pattern of shifting that you're supposed to get right there. Okay, this one's going to be the opposite, right? I want to decrease aggregate demand. Okay, how do you decrease aggregate demand? You shift your money supply to the left, right? Small. So it's just going to be inverse of this one. Here, supply of money decreases. You have your interest rate will go up in this case. When interest rate goes up, you don't even really need the borrowing, but I'm putting it in there anyways. Borrowing goes down, aggregate demand goes down. Okay, so that's pretty much the basic function that we're going to need for this one. This graph right here, but let's add in loanable funds that we did. So we're going to call this one our REER. And this will be our quantity of dollars. Here's my DL. Here's my SL. You can get the shifters from the PowerPoint, but I want to take a look at these ones down here. What happens when the interest rate, when government does deficit spending, it goes up. Just like that right there. Okay. And then the last one's a little more tricky. What happens if they decide to lend out less, right? Well, that means our supply goes down. Okay, they just want to lend out less. Our supply goes down. So what happens to the interest rate? It goes up. Investment will go down. Economic growth will go down. Okay. And that is it for the study guide and the worksheet that we had from yesterday. Any questions on any of those? No, we're good? Okay, so here, this is our quantity of dollars. And for this one, you can just straight draw the demand and supply and leave it alone. Okay, that one's perfect. That's the perfect situation up there. Let's take a look at a recession here. So we have our, AD. We have our AS, and this is a recession. So there it is right there. Okay, and I'll draw this one just so I can save some time. This is inflation. Okay, so here, I might as well label this near so I don't get confused. Rear, near, and rear. Okay, so this is my demand for money. This is my supply. And here, my DL, my SL, same here, DM and SM. Okay, I'm ready to get started now. Sorry, it took a little second there. No, I don't want you. I want you. Paint color blue. Okay, we know that our hold function here is to shift this aggregate demand right back to here. And you should already have that shift as well too. And we did it with the Fed over here by increasing the supply of money. If I recall, that's where we left off. Okay. Now, here's the thing I want to address. Okay, first of all, this is the only one graph that the Fed can touch, at least directly. Okay. Yeah, the loanable funds they touch indirectly, and I'm going to show you how that works here. But for the most part, the only one the Feds, when they're making all their tool changes that you're really going to affect here, is the money market one. That's the graph they directly affect, right? They're talking to banks directly. Here, no one gets to talk to the Fed. I don't get to talk to the Fed, and I'm only talking to the bank. Okay, and the bank's only talking to people who borrow, but yeah, they can go talk to the Fed on the other one. But we don't get to directly interact since it's just borrowers and savers put together in that one. Okay, so Fed increases supply of money, increases AD. What should we do fiscal policy wise though to fix this situation over here? Well, we should cut taxes, right? Okay, taxes go down, or government spending needs to go up. Okay. Now, taxes does not affect the loanable funds market, so I can ignore it because I don't need to see any other graphs really, the money market or the loanable funds market, if I'm just changing taxes. Okay. But if I change spending, remember we talked about what happens to spending over here is the government will need to borrow money. And when they do that, it increases our demand for loans there. And that actually increases the interest rate. Now, I'm going to come back and I'm going to address this one, this whole situation here in detail. But I want to just deal with this one first because it's just the opposite of the one that we have there. Here, we need to decrease our AD. How do we do that? We decrease the supply of money, right? And here, government will stop borrowing money because they're not going to spend it anymore. It goes down. So this one right here, the bottom one, is just inverse of the one above. Okay, but I want to take a look at this second situation in depth. Okay. Okay, so let's start off with that situation here. We have our price level. I'll write things out here. GDP real. And here's my aggregate demand. Here's my aggregate supply. Here is my long run. So we're in a recession. Okay, so let's look at fiscal here. We're going to put these together now. Fiscal. So here we can cut taxes and we can increase government spending. Now, let's go over to our loanable funds market. So we're going to call this our rear quantity of dollars. Here is my DL. Here is my SL. Okay, and if the government wants to fix this problem right here, let's do it blue. They want to increase aggregate demand, and we've already talked about their tools. Now we can get very specific here. If I know the marginal propensity to save, for example, and I know how short we are of the long run, I could get detailed and give you an exact number for that. Boom, this is how much we're gonna need to do. Either taxes or government spending. Now taxes we're going to ignore, okay? We're gonna ignore this one because we don't need to continue on if we just do taxes. But remember, taxes, we would have to get even bigger tax break than we would do with government spending in order to cover everything. Okay. So let's go over here. Let's say we decide to increase government spending. What is that going to do to my graph over here? What that will do is that will increase my demand for loans, right? Government borrowing. Okay, and I'm getting to what we need to talk about here in just a second. Okay, and we talked about this, and I don't think it ended up in our review sheet, so we're going to talk about it right now. Notice what happened here. Shoot, that's a 2. Dude, that was not planned, people. Undo, undo, wait, undo, undo, undo. There we go. Two. Okay, interest rate goes up, and we talked about this. This causes crowding out. Okay, but I said that situation is very unique on that chart that we just filled out there, that we started 2 weeks ago. And here's why, okay? Normally, this causes crowding out, and what happens is your aggregate demand then decreases slightly, right? Okay, and that's because of crowding out. But here, ideally, we don't want to have crowding out. We need to solve that problem. And I said most of the time, the Fed and the president should be working together. And here we're going to see why. So that's my DM and my SM. Now, just like on that chart that we just went through, in this situation, whether it's a recession, whether it's right here or right here, because we're still slight recession, this is just a greater recession, right? What the Fed needs to do is they need to increase the supply of money by their tools, right? Either lower the discount rate, lower the reserve requirement, or buy bonds, okay? However they do it, I don't really care. But take a look at what's happening over here. Notice, some of you have a keen eye, have caught this. Here's my interest rate here. Here's my interest rate here. Notice my interest rate has gone down. Wait a minute, Madrid. The interest rate's going up here and it's going down here. How does that actually work out? Okay. When they work in conjunction, like they're doing right here, they're doing on your chart that you just filled out. Okay. The government is increasing the interest rate by borrowing, but the Fed is lowering the interest rate by increasing the supply of money. It gets rid of our crowding out. It's gone. Crowding out no longer happens anymore. It's disappeared. Why is that? Well, notice that this represents supply of money. How does it affect this graph over here? Oh, darn it. Okay, I can fix that one. What happens? Well, let's continue on over here. And what it does is it increases the supply of money, right? Banks have more money. So look at what happens here. What is happening is the Fed is moving the supply of money over here. Remember, I said the Fed can only move the supply of money. So what they do is they end up moving the supply of money in this situation as well too. But notice the interest rate went right back up. But once the Fed increased the supply of money, we can lower the interest rate right back to what it originally is. And we get no crowding out. That's why it's important to have the fiscal policy and monetary policy to work together here. They need to work together. Okay, that's the monetary over here. And that's how the Fed will shift the graph over here. Again, you want to get technical. The Fed is only going to move supply. They can't control demand. Demand is whatever we want to borrow. It could try to make things appealing to you by adjusting the interest rate. But even if they put the interest rate at zero and you still just didn't want to borrow, you're not going to borrow. Okay. But the supply they can directly affect. They can change it over here. And then in turn, it moves the bank ones over here. Okay. So if supply moves here, technically it's going to move over here as well too. But you see how it all works together. And that's a test question that comes up all the time. It says, how can you solve the issue of crowding out? The Fed needs to increase the supply of money to lower the interest rate. So that way the crowding out doesn't happen. It's negated right here. Whew. Okay, any questions? That was a lot that we went through. No questions. Okay, that's excellent. So here's what I'll do. I'll put up the video of this one. I'll put up the answer key for the study guide as well too. I'll put up some practice multiple choice questions for you guys to go over. And what we do is when I see you guys on Tuesday, the first thing we'll do is we'll go over the multiple choice, make sure everyone understands it. And since I'll put the test together this weekend, I'll take a look and see if like there's any tricky parts or anything I feel that we need to review for the test. And what we'll do is we'll go over on Tuesday to make sure that there's no parts that fool us on the test and you guys can score really high. So we'll do kind of a going over a review of the multiple choice that I'll post up later, and maybe any tricky questions that might be on the test we'll address before we actually take the test on Tuesday. Okay. I will let you guys go. Don't look up for that stuff until about 2 o'clock. I'm going to have a meeting here that I got to take care of. And then after the meeting, I'll start getting work. I can probably post up the study guide stuff real quick, but the video, you expect that closer to 2 o'clock, and the same with the practice questions. Okay.